Rumi, whom he knows as one of the greatest Sufis in the history of Sufism, regards Jesus as one of the key centers in the spiritual path. For him, Jesus is a role model. This video is going to reveal Rumi's views on Jesus. In one of his works, Fihi Ma Fihi, Rumi interestingly depicts the story of Jesus, which is contained in the Quran in the story of Mary, who gave birth to Jesus and felt extreme pain. So according to Rumi, spiritually the story tells of a spiritual birth, a real birth when one is experiencing extreme pain, as Mary felt. Without experiencing extreme pain, we'll never find our true spiritual birth, our spiritual awakening. Typically, Rumi considers Jesus none other than a mystic, a Sufi worth imitating. For Rumi, Jesus was a Sufi because he had attained purity and deep love for God. Rumi describes Jesus as someone who didn't have a house, since the house was not important to Jesus. Jesus didn't have a house, but he did have a home in which the beloved lived. The most important thing for Jesus is the beloved who would carry and guide Jesus wherever he went. For Jesus himself, it doesn't matter where he goes. What matters is how he is guided by God, full of love and kindness. Concerning love, love is the central theme in the spiritual teachings of Rumi. Rumi later described it in one of his poems that love is a sign of a living person. In God's eye, a person who does not have the color of love is nothing but wood and stone. Rumi gives a fundamental position for love. In this case, it is true what Annemarie Schimmel said that Rumi's appreciation of Jesus greatly influenced his spiritual outlook. Rumi's symbolization of the figure of Jesus as a lover is important to note. His depiction of Jesus as a lover on the spiritual path is the same as the perspectives of other Sufis who often associate Jesus with love. It is undeniable that love is the main theme in the teachings of all Sufis. So within an important figure like Jesus, it is unsurprising for Rumi to regard Jesus as the divine lover. Still in Fihi Ma Fihi, in another passage, Jesus is described as a figure who has a higher level than John. Jesus has a higher level because he is closer to the grace, mercy and love of God. This view of Jesus was confirmed by Rumi himself in his other work, Mystical Poems of Rumi, where he argued that people can rejoice because they have faith. He sings, Jesus was a laugher, John the Baptist a frowner. The former laughed out of trust, the latter frowned from fear. Rumi recommends that despite the fact that we can't follow the spiritual path of Muhammad, at least we should follow the spiritual path of Jesus. Thus, the path of Jesus is one of the paths recommended by Rumi. The spirituality taught by Jesus became significant to Rumi because Jesus was believed to have had high spiritual qualities. Jesus was often mentioned as an eminent figure after Muhammad. In another of his poems, Jesus is considered a mountain where heaven is located. So if we want to get closer to heaven, then we have to approach Jesus, Mount Heaven like Jesus. Let me see like Moses, for God will not say to you, silence thou shalt not see me. Rumi's spiritual quality also appeared when Jesus was lived by Rumi as a sign of hope. Several times in several of his poems, Rumi mentions Jesus in the context of hope. Rumi calls Jesus a sign of the coming day of joy that he has been waiting for, the day when all misery disappears, and the only one remains is the day of joy. He wrote, Muhammad has returned from the ascension, Jesus has arrived from the fourth heaven. Every coin which is not of this place is counterfeit. Every wine which is not of the cup of the soul is impure. Likewise, in his other poems, Jesus is called the cry of hope. So Jesus here is a symbol of hope. All pain will be gone. All who endure hunger will be satisfied. Do not despair, my soul, for hope has manifested itself. The hope of every soul has arrived from the unseen. Do not despair, though Mary has gone from your hands, for that light which through Jesus to heaven has come. A similar depiction can also be seen, for example, when Jesus was supposed an example of the unexpected luck. Jesus leaps into the house to escape from the foe. Suddenly from the house, he discovers a passage to heaven. For Rumi, Jesus is also a healer from whom we can learn to be healing people. In his poem, Jesus is comprehended as medicine that can treat an aging soul to become young. In addition, a heart full of ugliness and agony will be treated by Jesus. If the heart has been treated, then the heart will be inhabited by Jesus, and he will be a protector for those who seek goodness. This was the trait of Jesus. It became the inheritance of the physicians. You will find in it the antidote if you have swallowed the poison of death. In his other poem, Rumi clearly put great appreciation of Jesus when Jesus by him was depicted as a healer for a sick soul. Now, like Jesus of Mary, you become the soul's physician. Rumi's perspective on Jesus is similar to Ibn Arabi's that sees Jesus as a healer. In fact, Ibn Arabi further comprehends Jesus as a divine spirit or the spirit of God who brings healing and life to others. Because Jesus is a person who has spiritual qualities with a pure heart. Rumi's view of Jesus is actually not against Islamic orthodoxy. This investigation of Jalaluddin Rumi's view of Jesus shows that this view has a transformative element by relying on love. Jesus is a person fully filled with love. His life is guided by love and indeed directed to the one he loves, namely God. With such a way of life, Rumi believes that Jesus himself is a person who spreads out love and has a huge impact on whom he meets spiritually. This is why Jesus himself is the embodiment of love itself. I'll see you on my next video.